Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to another EVE Online video. Today's video is a little bit different because I'm testing out some of the hardware that I got, including a green screen behind me. Hopefully it all works out, but I want to see what I can do with all of these fun little toys. Today's video is a discussion video. I want to talk a little bit about the Wardeck mechanics in EVE Online, and the reason why I'm making this video is because it's apparently a hot topic in the CSM minutes, and especially in the comments about the CSM minutes. I saw a lot of people talk about the Wardecks and mainly the problems with Wardecks in EVE Online at the moment. So let's get started. If you want to read up about this yourself, you can always go to eveonline.com. Then you have the articles website, which if you go down here for the dev blogs, you will find the CSM 13 Winter Summit minutes. That leads you to the dev blog with a link to the PDF itself, which is a 53-page document. That's quite a lot, and I haven't gone through all of that myself. I'm mostly looking for stuff that mostly interests me. And yeah, the Wardecks, while I haven't been Wardecked in quite a while and I'm basically ready for Wardecks, it's definitely something worth a look, I think. So let's move down and let's go for war declarations themselves. Now, I'm not going to read the whole part about war declarations, but I am going to open up with saying that the CSM was presented with numbers resulting from research into the state of war declarations in EVE, and those numbers quite starkly showed how asymmetric the situation is and how war declarations allow a small number of players to negatively affect a huge number of people with low risk. These numbers may be discussed further by CCP at a later date. I also want to add that somewhere else in the minutes, I don't think it's in the war declarations part, it also shows that activity from people that get Wardecked not only drop off during a Wardeck, but also don't pick up after a Wardeck anymore. And I think from that perspective, CCP is a little bit worried by what the Wardecks are doing to newer players at the moment in the game. So let's talk a bit about this and let's see if there are any solutions that we can find. First of all, from my own perspective, Wardecks are not a problem for me as I'm a well-established player at this point, and we have a solution which is actually not fighting those guys. That is probably part of the problem. You're definitely not incentivized to defend yourself or anything like that. The best idea when you're Wardecked in EVE Online is to avoid the fight, give them no targets so that they get bored and they drop your Wardeck. We have 3 bases of operations at the moment. We are based out of a Mars base in Dital, where we've got most of our structures. All of these, as with everything in EVE Online, we're willing to lose. They can be replaced very easily and it would not be a problem. We've got a second base of operations in Solitude, which is a faraway High-Sec island. Going there as a Wardecker would be quite an endeavor, especially if you want to do that in force and be sure of a kill. We also have a base of operations in Galente space itself, and my medium-term project is to have one in Minmatar space. So all of these bases together, stock them with jump clones, and you are basically ready for a war declaration, because you can be active in a Mars base on one day. You see an enemy, jump to Solitude. If you end up seeing an enemy there, you can always jump to Galente space, to Minmatar space, whatever. It's gonna be very tricky for them to actually find you. So there are counters to Wardecks, but it's mostly about denying content, which is quite unfortunate. Now, reading through the comments on these CSM minutes, I've seen that the problem lies, I don't think with established players that are used to playing in High-Sec, but rather with new players, and especially with corporations that are trying to grow, because apparently most of the Wardeckers have now coalesced into larger coalitions that focus on Wardecking hundreds of corporations at the same time. And apparently whenever a certain threshold is reached, let it be 10, 20 players, your corporation gets on that list and becomes just Wardecked consistently, which can be very annoying, of course, for anyone on the receiving end. On top of that, you're maybe also seeing that on the little extra video that I'm adding here. A lot of the war activities are actually just centered around camping the trade hubs, waiting for people that are not aware, not prepared, mostly newer players, and then just blowing those guys up. So at the moment it does look like the Wardecks are negatively impacting the game, and finding solutions to that might be on the radar for CCP at the moment. Now it must also be said that somewhere in here it says that CCP is first looking at the business case, at seeing what CCP actually wants to do when it comes to the Wardecks, how much time and effort they want to put in when it comes to changing the system or trying to improve the system. But also one little sentence here I think is very important, but I should start here. Having Wardecks limited, nope, that's not where I wanted to start. All right, in Omen says the issue with Wardecks is they can't be removed completely due to high-sec structures. You know, I think he means that there has to be a way to get rid of them. Having Wardecks limited to corporations with structures and adding victory conditions would be one way. I think I would agree with that. Give players that somehow like try to avoid the Wardeck but can have some PvE activities that count towards victory condition would help. But look here, opting out completely would mean that corporations would only exist as a social structure. So he's basically saying, you know, improve it or tear it out completely, which would then of course mean how are you going to get rid of high-sec structures. But the next sentence, CCP Fozzy says this is one of the leading ideas at this time. And so I'm not sure if this means ripping the whole thing out or looking for changing the Wardeck mechanic in order to make it better. If it's ripping it out completely, I think it would be a loss for the game. Wardecks have always been part of the game ever since I started playing. Sure, they can be annoying, but it's part of the harshness, part of the sandbox, that you're safe absolutely nowhere. Sure, you can still get ganked, I understand that, but I think that ripping them out, personally, I think that that would be a mistake, and I would rather see improvements made to the system itself. Now, do I have solutions? I haven't really thought enough about that, so I can't really give you guys any good solutions on the Wardeck mechanic at the moment. I will give you guys a perspective from another game, the game that must never be named, but I'm gonna do so anyways. But if you guys have either experiences with the Wardeck mechanic, or if you have solutions for the Wardeck mechanic, I would love for you to post those in the comments. If we can get CCP to look at them, perhaps knowing that it's definitely on the radar, that they're keeping an eye on it and seeing what it does to the players, perhaps improvements can be made to the system in the not too distant future. On the other hand, as I was saying, the perspective is that sure, it's a completely different game, it's World of Warcraft, I've been playing that, but the solution there I think has been very elegant from Blizzard. It's the war mode mechanic where you basically flag yourself for PvP. There is only one war going on there, of course, between the Alliance and the Horde, but this way they definitely brought back world PvP. You have raids, small groups that do world content, flagged for PvP, and then, you know, from time to time you get small skirmishes, you get big fights, you get fights that escalate, and all of that good stuff, which comes with being flagged and being able to choose to join PvP rather than being forced into PvP. Is that exact mechanic an option? Can you just opt out for PvP in EVE Online? Of course, that would never be a good solution, but perhaps on the corporation level, something like that can be interesting. You already have the faction warfare mechanics, which are basically wars that you can join by joining specific corporations, but can you imagine if you could put up active wars between two groups and that you could then flag your corporation to help one of those sides and to be, of course, vulnerable to attack for the other sides? I think that could be interesting. It would definitely take away the very skewed asymmetric situation that at the moment the attackers are basically completely in control. But yeah, the system in EVE Online is of course so much more complex that that will probably have lots of drawbacks as well, to just be able to flag yourself for a war and join in. My idea would be that, yeah, being able to help defenders should definitely be made more easy, but how to fix all of these problems, very difficult to say. On top of that, in EVE Online, as with everything, you've got the problem of neutrals, right? People often have neutral logistics at the ready in case of an escalation of or problems, which definitely doesn't help incentivizing you to fight against someone that's wardecking you. And you always have the problem of potential abuse, of course. You don't want having players starting to wardeck their alt corporations because they might get more out of it. If, for instance, you would have some sort of objectives for the war that would then end the war in your advantage. If the rewards are worth it, people are just going to start farming wars amongst themselves as well, of course. A very, very tricky situation, definitely a difficult balancing problem for EVE Online and for CCP, this war declarations system. And I would love to hear what you guys think about, especially about this sentence here. Do you guys think that ripping the whole system out of the game is on the radar for CCP? Would you be for or against that? Or do you think that CCP Falls is actually talking about making improvements to the war declaration system? Would love to hear all of that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.